Greetings and salutations. Welcome to a special episode of the Legal Beagles podcast. Today we're going to be talking about tyrants in our police force. We've seen an uprising in our group of harassment by these officials. When they get bested in the law, they tend to take matters into their own hands. Whether any of y'all know or not, Be Free last week in Texas was arrested in the court parking lot by a tyrant officer who went and got an illegal arrest warrant signed and arrested him and tried to bring him to jail. Randy Kelton came to his aid, and we're thankful for that. And well, that officer is in pretty deep trouble at this moment, as criminal complaints have flowed in, and lots of other actions will be taken I think this officer will be lucky to keep his job. But we have another instance over in South Carolina of our friend Beth, who has been harassed repeatedly by the same officer that no one seems to want to help at all. But before we get into that, I want to read a word of encouragement. And it's the definition of Goliath from the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary by Charles Fillmore. And it says, Goliath, from the Hebrew, meaning revealing, conspicuous, taken off, an exile, a soothsayer, a Philistine giant, whom David killed with a stone thrown from his shepherd's sling in 1 Samuel 17. The metaphysical definition. Ideas are not all the same importance. Some are large and strong, and some are weak and small. There are aggressive, domineering ideas like Goliath that parade themselves prominently, brag about their power, and with fearful threats of disaster keep us frightened into submission into their unrighteous reign. These domineering ideas of error have one argument that they impress upon us at all times: fear of results should we dare to meet them openly and oppose their reign in consciousness. The fear of opposing prevailing ideas, although we know them to be erroneous, is woven into our whole mental fabric. This fear is portrayed by the spear of Goliath, and the narrative most aptly states, and the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam. The strong man's fully armed, referred to by Jesus, is in the subconscious mind. In the natural man, he manifests his physical strength. But in the regeneration, he is overcome and his possessions are divided, or given to the other faculties as a nucleus around which the higher forces gather. The stronger than he who takes away the whole armor in which the strong man trusted is spiritual strength. The overcoming of Goliath by David illustrates this mastery of the spiritual over the material. Goliath trusted in his armor, which represents the protective power of matter and material conditions. David, meaning spiritual strength, had no armor or material protection. His power was gained by trust in divine intelligence, through which David saw the weak place in the Goliath armor. Direct to this weak place, with the sling of his concentrated will, he sent a thought that shattered the forehead of the giant. This shows how easy it is to overcome any seemingly strong personal and material condition when the mind of spirit is brought into action. David was sure of himself because he had slain the lion that killed his sheep. This lion symbolizes the beast in man. When overcome, or rather transmuted to finer energy, it becomes a mighty soul strength. The power of Goliath seems to have existed principally in his ability to frighten the Israelites. Their fear of him was induced by his great size and his pomp of outer display. Physical strength is prone to brag, and in the vanity that leads to boasting lies its utter weakness. Knowing this, David approached Goliath in a simple and inoffensive manner, which aroused the contempt of the giant and made him easy to defeat. Goliath stood for his own strength. David went forth but with one idea: to prove that there was a God in Israel. When one goes forth to prove his own strength, he sooner or later comes to grief. But he who goes forth to prove the power of God is guided in every way and is the inevitable victor. The story of David and Goliath is one of the most familiar of all Bible stories, and is also one from which many practical lessons can be drawn. One lesson may be considered is the individual's desire for both spiritual and worldly advancement. Side by side, these desires are striving for supremacy, each in turn occupying a relative degree of importance in the mind. Even Jesus Christ had presented to his own consideration the possibility of ruling over all kingdoms of this world. It does not take much of spiritual understanding to know the futility of so-called material advancement and power, but it does require very definite and well-directed activity really to correct one's tendencies in this direction. The lure of pomp and power is great to one who does not fully realize the spiritual truth that exists under the material manifestation. The giant of outer splendor often looms up before the spiritual aspirant, but is not conquered by negative measures. The best means are always the simple, direct ones. To meet adversity with its own tactics but arouses it. To meet it with a direct declaration of truth renders it an easy victim. We are often scared, even terrified, at the gigantic proportions of some leading thought on the error side, represented by Goliath. Our Goliath may be different from that of our neighbor, but it boasts and brags daily of its strength, and it intimidates us with its show of power. People who depend upon the resources of materiality, as Saul had come to do, often give up in despair when these thoughts of sense continue their bullying methods day and night. There is but one way to meet and subdue them, and that is through the power of love, represented by David. The ruddy-faced shepherd boy, sympathetic love, will not bring these results. Love must have the assurance of truth, and must be sent forth with confidence, courage, and power in both thought and word. I thought that was appropriate today for what we're about to get into. Our friend Beth in South Carolina, I'll preserve her last name at this moment, but she was stopped a couple of weeks ago by an officer for a seatbelt violation. The officer proceeded to drag her out of her car, assault her, throw her on the hood of her car, arrest her, and jail her for 22 hours because she didn't register her car and wasn't wearing a seatbelt. But he only knew the seatbelt when he pulled her over. Didn't ask her name. She asked for a superior. And that is what prompted his rage. And so she went to court, and the judge was a bit of a tyrant, although acknowledging some of her arguments, chose to ignore them and gave the power to the officer and his word, believed his word over hers. And so she had filed a few motions to dismiss and some other things. The court case was ongoing, even though the judge had made an order. And yesterday, or the day before, she was stopped again by the same officer, very near to her house. And he once again towed her car. However, he did not bring her to jail, but he did confiscate the car and her plate again. Her homemade plate says not for hire. And now they say they won't let her pick up her car until she registers it or has it towed out of the yard. And so she's under a lot of pressure to write all of these things for the court. We're going to have to probably get a TRO, temporary restraining order or something from another court to hold this entire police force at bay. I believe the city council and the chief are all aware of this, and they chose to just ignore it, just let her continue down the path. But I'm going to give you a few more details here. I'm going to read her description of the traffic stop, her first traffic stop. And what happened? Affiant, that's Beth, having just left the bank with receipt, was stationary at a stoplight next to North Augusta police officer's vehicle at approximately 1:45 p.m. on April 15, 2024. Officer pulled behind Affiant at the next light and turned on his emergency lights. Affiant pulled into the parking lot and parked in the shade. Affiant was stopped for seatbelt offense and unlawfully arrested and detained for making a statement in reference to South Carolina Code 56-1-80 as to her driver's license, and then requesting that the officer call his superior. As said, officer had already violated her constitutionally protected and secured rights. Affiant was then yanked from her car, assaulted, thrown against her car, and handcuffed. Said officer was hurting Affiant, and he was asking her name, of which he did not ask prior to the physical detainment. Affiant was not asked to identify herself. Said officer only asked for a driver's license. If Affiant was required to carry a driver's license, Affiant would be required to register her car. Another officer arrived at the time. Affiant was being yanked from her car and handcuffed. Affiant was unaware of why said officer opened her door and yanked her phone from her hand and grabbed her and pulled her out of her car. Affiant was not informed of her crime or offense. Affiant was told she was going to jail for an unregistered plate, personal sign, and that her car was being towed. Affiant was denied her identification and personal belongings, purse, phone, contact information, which were left inside the car. Affiant demanded to be taken to the magistrate. Affiant was denied a probable cause hearing and was informed that she would be detained overnight for a bond hearing at 10 o'clock in the morning. Affiant was detained for 22 hours with no registration. And let me just read to you South Carolina Code 23-6-150. When any person is apprehended by an officer upon a charge of violating any laws of the state relative to highway traffic, motor vehicles, or commercial motor carriers, such person shall immediately be served with an official summons, brought before the proper magistrate. Apprehending officer may accept a sum of money as bail, not less than the minimum nor more than the maximum fine, but in no case to exceed $200. And this is from South Carolina Code 23-6-140. Powers, duties, and responsibilities of officers and troopers. Enforcement of the laws of the state relative to highway traffic, traffic safety, and motor vehicles shall be primary responsibility for the enforcement of laws relating to commercial motor vehicles, relating to size, weight, permits, licensing, and inspection for size and weight tolerance and safety. All officers and troopers shall have the same power to serve criminal processes against offenders as sheriffs of the various counties, and also the same power as such sheriffs to arrest without warrants, and to detain persons found violating or attempting to violate any laws of the state relative to highway traffic, motor vehicles, or commercial motor carriers. So clearly, she demanded to go to the magistrate. That was denied. Just straight to jail for 22 hours. Jerking a 100-pound little lady out of her car and roughing her up. Well, I'm going to tell you his name. This is arresting officer John Hardy, badge number 377 of the North Augusta's Public Safety Officer. And I'm sorry, In Smoke was the first one from badge number 377. Arresting officer John Hardy of the North Augusta Public Safety Officer, badge number 449. Assisted in the warrantless search and affiance removal of car and personal plate. There was Corporal Waldrop on the scene. Corporal Hopfear was also called to the scene. So all of these officers have witnessed the abuse of their duties, stepping outside their authority and scope, and have exercised their brawn strength over a 100-pound lady. Yeah, hope that makes them feel good. They're real tough guys, you know, real real tough guys. They were in real danger. Real danger. So, I don't know about you guys, but this concerns me. This is one of our own. And I'm going to make it known that she's not alone, and they are being watched. What is happening and what they do next, we will know about it, and we will let them know. So I'm going to personally call a couple of numbers that I may or may not be able to find and put on the screen for you with their names and badge numbers. And I'm going to let the chief know, and I'm going to let the city council know what is going on, and that people are watching, and that they best govern themselves accordingly within the scope of the law and their proper authority. So I'm going to be respectful, and I'm not going to be threatening, but I'm going to let them know in certain terms that the people are watching, and they have violated their oath of office, and they're committing crimes against the people that they've sworn an oath to protect. If you feel moved to do so, that is your choice. But Beth is alone. She doesn't have a Randy Kelton to show up and bail her out of jail, or, assault the officers and tell them what laws they're breaking. She has a photographic memory and knows all these laws, but it is a very scary thing to be alone in jail, I promise. So, without further ado, I will let you get to it, but I will put I will put her criminal complaint in the main chat of Telegram and posted below in this video. And there may or may not be some names and phone numbers that appear on the screen that you may want to take some action. You may want to call somebody. I don't know. But our hearts and thoughts, our prayers and thoughts are with Beth. And we know that she's going to stand strong against the Goliath. Y'all have a beautiful day.